All right, guys, welcome to the Entrepreneur Wrap. Every single show, we talk to fellow entrepreneurs to gain findings, industry insight, and what they have learned as both business owners and entrepreneurs each and every show. He's the president of Image One, ranked by Forbes Magazine as one of the top 25 small giants in America in 2017. He's also a Forbes columnist and the author of the new book, Do Nothing, A Leader's Guide to Do Nothing. Rob Dube, how's it going, man?
It's going very well. Thank you so much for having me. I love going on your website. Right before I came on with you, I had to put it on so I could listen to the music and get pumped up.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate it, Rob. You and I have had some conversations. I know actually a previous guest of the Entrepreneur Wrap, Scott Fritz, introed you to me, and we've had some cool conversations. And I thought it would be really interesting for our Entrepreneur Wrap audience to really discuss how you've really made your way here in the industry, but also some of the stuff you're working on. Because as someone that hasn't taken a vacation in 2.5 years, I'm really excited about this do nothing approach and the book that you have coming out. But I'm going to start with your journey, Rob, and kind of let us know that entrepreneurial spirit maybe you had as a child and how you really got into business ownership.
Yeah, so in the 9th grade, my best friend Joel Perlman and I started selling blow pop lollipops out of our locker. We would actually go buy them wholesale for a nickel and resell them for a quarter. Literally, when I tell you this, the kids were lined up and down the hallways at our high school, and they would fly off. So it was a great product, the best margins ever. There was never a problem with the product. And so we got known as the blow pop guys walking around the hallways at school, and we had quarters bulging out of our pockets the rest of the day. So that's, I think, when we reflect, we always say that blow pop time was when the entrepreneurial bug bit us.
Yeah, so I graduated high school back in 2005, and my blow pop story is mixed CDs. That was right when Napster came out and LimeWire. And if you had a burner, the ability to burn that music on a CD, you were a very popular man. So $5, you can get any song you would like on a CD, and that was. It feels like we all have that type of story, right? That kind of gets the entrepreneurial in us all going.
Totally.
So wanted to discuss, tell me a little bit about Image One and how that came to be and what you do over there.
Yep. So after the blow pops, Joel and I kept at it. We were doing different businesses all through high school and in college, and we weren't maybe paying attention quite enough to our studies. So coming out in 1991, when we were graduating from college, we didn't have a lot of job prospects. Joel read a small classified ad in the back of Entrepreneur Magazine. There were these new things that were about 3 years old called laser printers. And this ad was to learn how to resell remanufactured toner cartridges. Because at the time, toner cartridges for printers were very expensive. Well, I guess it's still the case. They're still very expensive. So we started doing that out of the basement of Joel's parents' house. The first year we did $6,700 in business. The second year we did about $40,000. Wow. And the third year we did about $110,000. So, I mean, right out of the gates, it was tough. We weren't making any money, and our parents were very supportive, but we were having a blast. It was our own business. So that's how we got started.
And then what, as far as Image One in its current stature here in 2018, how do you guys do what you do?
Yep. So as we evolved over the years, we do what's called now is managed print services. So this is where we sell the printers, multifunction copiers, and we supply and service them through service contracts, supply and service contracts. And we do that for medium to enterprise size companies. We also sell software solutions and provide these software solutions to teach these organizations how to print less, make sure their devices are secure. Security is a huge thing this year or these days. And so that's kind of where the business has evolved to.
So I want to hop into the Do Nothing book that you have coming out, and looking at some of your Forbes articles, you talk a lot about balance, right, and the ability to, I think, as entrepreneurs or really anybody, that work-life balance that we all really struggle with, and wanted to kind of talk shop on that angle. So what led you to that? It seems like maybe with this journey, maybe you hit burnout, or you and your partner are working too much, and you figured there's got to be something more. So excited to kind of hear how you even came to that conclusion.
Well, growing up, I had some health issues, and I was very active. But the health issues sometimes were a little challenging. I had severe asthma, I had eczema, and a heart irregularity. I also had some family challenges that I was dealing with, so it caused a lot of anxiety. And that continued with me as Joel and I started the business. And so here we are, we're best friends, brothers by another mother, and we start this business together. And it was tough. It was
Yeah.
like being married, and we're still partners, and it's the same thing. It's like being married. And just to compound some things, I got married really early. So less than a year after starting the business, I got married. A couple years later, my wife and I had our first child.
Right.
And so, wow, it was just mounting. And I realized somewhere along the way, I just wasn't as good of a person as I needed to be and as I should be. And so I tried different things. I went to therapy, which was very helpful. And in 2004, Joel and I sold our business, and it was a very stressful time. Going through the negotiations was stressful. We stayed on. We had a 3-year employment contract. Working for somebody for the first time ever was very challenging.
Tough, yeah.
And I was looking for different ways to help my anxiety. And I came upon meditation. And there was one particular moment that I always speak to, and that was in the summer of 2005. It was less than 1 year into our 3-year employment agreement. And we were on vacation, my family and I. My family was out enjoying the day. I was inside doing some work, and I was really frustrated, and I was on the verge of tears. And I looked over at this chair across the room, and I just remember saying to myself, you know what, Rob, just go sit in that chair and breathe in and breathe out and breathe in and breathe out. And I went and did it for 5 minutes. And when I was done, my problems didn't go away and the frustrations were still there, but I just felt a lot calmer, and my mind felt a lot clearer. And so I thought maybe there's something to this. And so I stuck with it. I kept at it. And here we are 13 years later.
Well, this is something I think all entrepreneurs struggle with. We call it entrepreneurial guilt. So you're either guilty that you're not hanging out with your wife and your kid and your friends, and socially you feel guilt.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing those social things, you're feeling guilt that you're not working on that proposal. You're not working on that system that your employees need so bad. So how have you dealt with that throughout your career? Because I think it's something that I battle with, all entrepreneurs battle with. And how have you dealt with that?
That's a great question. Things that come to mind, and I'm still dealing with it, so let me just say that right out of the gates. But a lot of people talk about work-life balance, and I think my meditation practice has helped me understand that it's really just all life, and to be okay where I am at this moment, right here, right now. And if I'm not fully present, and I'm thinking about where I should be or what I missed out on, those are things I can't control. And so there's no point in it. So just being fully present right here in the moment. It might be a frustrating moment, and that's okay to acknowledge, but that's where I am, and just do the things, show up and do the things that I need to do to move forward.
So let's talk about the book. What does the book get into, and what are you hoping people walk away after reading it cover to cover?
Well, I did a talk at a conference, and that's what prompted this. And somebody came up and said, you ought to write a book on this. So I dove in and did that. And I thought a lot about what I went through and some of the things that I was confused about. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to demystify it, because from my standpoint, and again, this is just from my standpoint, it's a simple thing to do to really bring some perspective, to practice being more aware and more present. And it's just sitting down. And for me, it's focusing on my breath for some period of time. And while I'm doing that, all these thoughts and all these things are coming up. And it's just bringing myself back to that present moment that you and I were just talking about. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about in the book is that's, to me, what this is all about. Then how do you go about doing this, and who are some successful people who are doing it? So I was able to travel around the country and meet with some pretty outstanding people. I'll point to Mark Bertolini, the CEO of Aetna, 30,000 employees, highly successful. But when he came into the company, the stock price was tanking, And as an avid meditator, he took a very unique approach to leadership at the company. And over the past, I think it's been 10 or so years, their stock price has skyrocketed. And for those of you that may have noticed, CVS is looking to acquire them.
And then, so why don't we get granular for a second, and someone that is a little more ignorant, like myself, or maybe a listener as well, when it comes to meditation, I think there may be some negative connotation to it, like, the ohms and people, what does this all do? Are you just taking a nap? Are you being lazy? I mean, these are something that I think people, when they hear meditation, they have these negative connotations to it. But really, to your point, there's so many people, so many successful people that really are able to kind of shut their brain down for a period of time and exercise that muscle that really controls your nervous system and your muscles, and your ability to think outside the box is so important, but really it hasn't reached mass scale in the United States.
I felt the same exact way. Yeah. So I'm glad you acknowledge that. And so I decided, I'm a fact finder, so I decided to become a student and a practitioner, and I dove in, and the first thing I looked for were studies. And I found out that there had been 6,700 studies done on the benefits of meditation since 1972. Most of which it was pretty much overwhelmingly positive. Now it really took on a lot of steam in the last 10 years. There's been 4,500 studies. And there's a book called Altered Traits, which was written by Richard Davidson, who's a world-renowned neuroscientist, and Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. It's a best-selling book. And they dove into these studies, and they identified 60 that were basically rock solid of the benefits of meditation, not only on our mind, but on our bodies. You talked about that, and in our hearts. I'll even go so far as to say that. So I also learned that branches of the military, for example, are teaching it. The Virginia Military Institute, they're a great example. All incoming cadets have to take a course. It's a required course. It's called Modern Warriorship. Great name for incoming cadets. And they learn how to meditate, and they learn how to take on a daily practice. And then companies, I'm an entrepreneur, so I was curious, like, how would this be beneficial to me as a business person, as a leader, to my company? And I learned that companies all over the world are integrating this into their health and wellness programs. Back to Aetna, they've had over 13,000 people at their company take the meditation class. It's like sold out. And Google has done the same thing, and they've been doing it for a number of years. And it's the same thing. The classes are consistently sold out.
Let's go back to those 60 studies that you said were rock solid in terms of the benefits. What are those benefits, and what are the findings from those studies?
Yeah, so they do all types of studies on, like one of the ones that I like to point to, it had to do with a group of leaders, and they separate them into two groups. They're all identified as highly stressed out, and I think there were 45 people in each side of the study, and they were both groups were in highly stressed environments. On the one side, they did not teach them meditation, but they watched their blood pressure and heart rates. And on the other side, they did the same thing, but they taught them meditation and got them into a daily routine, and they had to check in to say that they had done this. And by the end of the period of the study, which I think was a few months long, the group that was meditating had shown a greater empathy for things when they were shown like pictures on a screen of things that were going on. Their physical blood pressures had reduced. So in the other group, nothing had changed. So there's an example I like to point to. And, it's one of the reasons that my company, would, like so many of us, were getting thrown at, so many things thrown at us. I encourage people to consider this and take it on as a practice to see if it will be helpful for them to sort of slow things down.
And to that point, the practices or the disciplines really vary, right? You've talked a little bit about how the first time you ever did it, you just said, hey, I just need to sit down and chill and breathe in and breathe out for a while, which is actually, I think, one of the ways you can do so. But I guess, how do you do it, and what are the different ways that is it 20 minutes in the morning? Is it 20 minutes at night as well? What is the actual practice of of meditation? In your
Yeah,
opinion?
so the first thing I learned was how to sit, which I didn't know there was a way to sit. And it's not complicated, but if you're in a chair or on a cushion, you're sitting upright because you want to be aware. You mentioned sometimes people fall asleep, and somebody taught me years ago, well, if you're falling asleep, you're just really tired, and your body's just saying, look, it's overriding everything right now. You need to go to sleep. So, but sitting upright keeps you aware, and you're firmly grounded, your feet on the floor and your hands on your legs, and just looking downward. So I learned what's called the 7 points of posture, which is just a great 20-second, 30-second way to get set up the right way. And then I learned to focus on my breath, but there are other types of meditations with a mantra based, as an example. There's loving kindness, which I like to do on the weekends. And that's where you'd simply go through, all the people in your life and wish them loving kindness and health and happiness. And then you wish that upon people you don't even know, and maybe some people that you even have struggles with. And so that's always a good feeling, at least in my experience, to go through that. So I learned that. Learning how to breathe, breathing in and realizing that so many thoughts are arising the vast majority of the time, even for the most experienced meditators, that's what's happening. And I think one of the things that I heard the most, and one of the things that I was confused about was, I can't stop thinking.
Yeah.
And that's
Amen.
not the idea. You're not going to stop thinking. You're just bringing yourself back to the present moment, to your breath. It's really, that's all there is to it. It's simply said, hard to do. And so just let yourself off the hook. When you realize you're thinking, just say to yourself, thinking, and just return back to your breath for as long as you can. And then your mind's going to take over and go a million places again. And you just continue with that routine.
Well, I'll give you a quick story. So STN Digital, the company that I have found and run, is essentially a social first marketing company, and was with my girlfriend and went to a Jay-Z concert here in San Diego, and just trying to enjoy the moment, enjoy the music. But my mind's constantly racing, as you said, and I'm thinking, why don't sponsors come on board for concerts like this and do on-site activations that are fan-centric? And I'm just like, why can't I just enjoy the concert? Why is my brain always running? And I think as entrepreneurs, our biggest quality, or our biggest pro and biggest con, is that we're constantly thinking of ways that we can evolve and move and shift and move and groove. At the other part of it is you're constantly thinking. You can't turn the brain off. And I've talked to a lot of colleagues and entrepreneurs that I know and respect. They just want to find a way to turn their brain off for a second and kind of reset. And I think that leads me to my next question, which is the do nothing retreat, which is something before I met you, I've thought about. And I've also heard people I wish there's somewhere I can go that I can just like work out, do yoga, and not look at my phone for a few days. And it sounds like this is exactly what you created.
It's right along those lines.
Yeah.
So, I learned about the benefits of a silent retreat, and, it scared the heck out of me. And I said, well, I'll try it for a day. And I went to one for a day, and I thought there's something to this. And so I jumped in and I did a 7-day silent retreat. And so the first thing people ask me is what goes on during these retreats, and not a whole lot. You are sitting for 20 to 30 minutes at a time and meditating. You'll do what's called mindful walking. You're just walking back and forth slowly, being very mindful. Mindful eating, you're thinking about the origins of your food, and you're maybe getting more into what it's really tasting like than what we do in our normal day-to-day. And your awareness just starts to go up so much. And then there's some stretching or yoga or whatever works for you, just to stay limber. And one of the things that I realized on these retreats was there's a certain point, and for me, it's about the third day in, when all the surface stuff starts to go away. And I start to feel my brain again. And think about that for a second. Do you think you know what your brain even feels like? I don't know about you, but I've been busy since I was 5 years old.
Yep.
It's been nonstop. So all of a sudden there's clarity that starts to happen slowly, and then more the next day. And you start to see things in a different way, and your awareness, you start to actually see things in a different way, and think about things in a different way. And so it's very powerful.
And tell me if you've been in this situation, because in the opposite side of that, rather than filling your brain maybe in a good way, anytime I've gone through a very stressful situation where I've had to fire a top employee and I'm going through a lot of stress, I can feel like the frontal lobe of my brain, it hurts. It's not a headache. It's not a migraine. There's something like there's so much going on in your brain. You're thinking of every scenario, and you're thinking of how you're going to approach it. And the front of your brain actually hurts. And I don't know if that's just something that I've dealt with, but wanted to hear in your life if you've dealt with that type of stress and you've kind of felt, yeah.
Yes. I love that you said that. Because I do feel my brain, and it's like, wow, my brain hurts. That's what I always say. And I think about, so I'm a runner and I've done 14 marathons. And so I know what it's like to sort of, train and go through that and participate in the event. And it's an endurance event. And then, there's aches and there's pains. And then when you're done, there's a period of time where you start to recover. And I'll say to myself, wow, it feels so good. Like my legs don't feel jello-y anymore, or achy, and whatever the other aches and pains. I just feel normal again. And that's how I equate it to when I'm on a retreat, is my brain starts to just not hurt anymore. It just starts to feel what like it probably should feel. And I think that part of taking on a regular practice is very impactful, because the more you do this, and it's not an overnight thing, you have to stay with it. And that's one of the things that's important to realize, is that when these stressful things come up, your brain doesn't hurt as much. You have more of a capacity for it. Yep. And it takes practice. It's just like sports. It takes practice. You have to shoot a zillion free throws before you can get your percentages up to over 90%.
Yep.
So it's not unlike any of those sorts of things.
And speaking of sports, Phil Jackson, who used to coach Michael Jordan in the Bulls and Shaq and Kobe in the Lakers, he was known as the Zen Master, and one of the only coaches to kind of bring in meditation to the practices. And he would burn his sage and give everybody, books, and everybody kind of looked at him as a weird dude. But I mean, the guy has 11 championship rings. There's got to be at least a part of it that was able to, I guess, tap into some of the player's psyche in a slightly different way that could have given him that competitive edge when they were in the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're in the mix of it, the best athletes are able to take it, like that last shot they missed, they can forget about it.
Yeah.
They get right into the present moment. And those are the best athletes, the ones that can just forget about what happened and move forward. And Phil Jackson brought in a guy by the name of George Mumford. That was their meditation teacher, so to speak. And I the name of the book that he wrote is, I'm blanking on it right now, but it's for athletes, and it's a really fantastic book about the benefits of meditation.
Back in the 60s, you watch a show like Mad Men, and they were drinking while they were at work, and they all smoked. And even back in the day, they would say smoking is great because it de-stresses you. And that was kind of the marketing ploy that the cigarette companies, tobacco companies were pushing. Then, of course, people start to die of lung cancer, and we all know the story. And I hate to be morbid here, but no time in human history have we been saturated with this much content, TV, Facebook, Twitter, phone calls, text messages, that dopamine constantly coming at you as your friend texts you or Skypes you or WhatsApps you. And there's got to be something that comes out of that. I hope we don't all have eye cancer from the blue light that we look at every day. But to your point, when it comes to, I don't think our brains have had this much stuff coming at it on a 24-hour basis.
Yeah, I think you are so right. And I think that's why people are looking to something like this. And I, the thing I notice most about the book is when they see the title, Do Nothing, I just see people staring at it and they say, I have to do that. I have to do nothing. That's what they say to me.
Because I'm always doing something.
Yeah, I really get that. So, just the title alone, it's just telling you where people's psyche is at. We're all overstimulated right now, and we need to take some time and sit down. And you asked me earlier, what's a good routine? In essence, that's what you asked me. Any amount of time that you can get in. So, I mean, if you can get in and get, sit down and breathe for a few minutes, that's great. Hey, in a perfect world, if you could do it for 20 minutes, a day or twice a day, that's fantastic. So it isn't a huge commitment, even though it kind of feels like it is. But, many people have said, I can't point to any studies on this, so it's more just how people feel, is they feel more productive. And I think that's because they're thinking clearer and they're getting through things faster.
So let's break that down for listeners that are kind of picking up what you're putting down and understand the conversation we're having. What do you think is a good step? Is it right when you wake up, before you have your cup of coffee, sit on your couch for 5 minutes? Is it when you come back after a long day? Like, how do you think would be a great way to have someone start and also be able to continue with it in a good way?
I would suggest thinking about your day. And where's the time in your day where you think you could get away? So if that's first thing in the morning, wake up before the family's up or whatever, if that's after everybody's in bed, or if it's in the middle of the day when you go to lunch and you have a spot that you can, find that spot and commit to it. And I would suggest working your way up slowly. There's apps out there like Meditation Studio is a great one, and they'll take you through if you need to be guided. But pick the time and stick with it. Put yourself in a position to be successful. So don't try to do, a half an hour the first time. Do a short period of time and work your way up until you sort of feel a routine. And for me, I actually do it in the morning and in the evening. And I'm sharing this with you because prior to that, and even now, I wake up and I notice, like, within seconds, I'm already thinking about the day.
Yep.
I'm just like, I just woke up. So for me, going over and meditating, that allows for the thoughts of the day to start kind of flowing through and bringing me right out of the gates, practicing coming back to the present moment and not getting caught up. And so it's a good way for me to start the day. Now, at the end of the day, I'm usually wiped out. Exhausted like many people. And oftentimes I'll say, I just need to get in bed and be horizontal. But I not once regretted sitting down and allowing all this stuff that went on throughout the day to just go through my mind, and again, coming back to the present moment. It actually is a great segue for me before I get into bed to just sort of, unwind.
I got one worse for you, and maybe this has turned into a therapy session, but even when I'm sleeping, the lucid dreaming element, I'm thinking through proposals and how I'm going to handle situations. I wake up and I feel like I just, did 3 hours of brainstorm sessioning while I was sleeping. So I'm sure you've dealt with that too. I think there's part of that lucid dreaming aspect where you're still working as you sleep.
For sure. It's nonstop. Unbelievable. And that's why this is important. Some people say, hey, I zone out, watch TV, I zone out, and I'm on Netflix or whatever, or when I go to sleep, and you're still doing. Sleeping's doing. This is you're aware. You're awake, you're aware, and you're allowing those thoughts to flow through and just coming back to your breath. So you can practice that in your day, in your daily moments where you're getting caught up and you're in the middle of a proposal and it's frustrating, and you can stop for a second and catch that moment, maybe before you lash out at the person that you're working with, because you're just so frustrated at that moment. It's that moment between stimulus and response that is so powerful.
I'm going to ask you a couple quick hit questions and get your thoughts on this. Being an entrepreneur, I think it'll be interesting to hear from you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received? Well, there's two, and it has to do with, I'm involved in this organization called the Small Giants Community. Okay. And a piece of advice was to care for the totality of your team members' lives. And so that was very powerful for me. The second was to open our books. There's a person by the name of Jack Stack, and he wrote a book called The Great Game of Business, which outlines how to do this. And I resisted it for a number of years. And when I finally did it, and I saw how people embraced it and started to make better decisions, I wish I would have done it so much long ago. It's amazing when people understand the financials, the types of decisions that they make.
And then I would like to actually get you a little more thought on that core value aspect when you talk about the totality. You're talking about your team members as your employees as you're running a company, correct?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, yeah, speak more on that and kind of what that means and how you've seen that help you in your career.
Yes. So, for example, we started doing an exercise with all of our team members at the end of each year where they either update if they've been a part of our team already, or if they're new, they create a vision and goals worksheet. And so we have a visioning process that they go through. They look out into the future and write an inspiring and practical story about where they'll be in sometime in the future. They pick the date. And then they start taking it down. What's it look like in 5 years to get there? What's it look like in 3 years to get there? What does it look like next year to get there?
Yeah.
Then here's where we come in the totality. Now, we as a leadership team have a responsibility every quarter to sit down with every team member and go through their vision and goals worksheet and help them move towards their life's visions. And it doesn't have to do with the company. It can have to do with anything. And it could be somebody who wants to buy their first house within the next couple years. It could be somebody who wants to move up the chain in a company, and maybe it's not with us, and that's okay. We want to help them while they're a part of our team and lift them up as much as we can. And so that's providing what we believe is an extraordinary experience for them. And we call it the Image One Cycle of Care, where it's true appreciation and gratitude for each other. And it just kind of goes in a circle. You know, we're just constantly caring and appreciating each other.
I will play devil's advocate. I want to see if you've been with this before. When it comes to someone making $15 an hour and their 1 year goal is to make $400,000 and buy a house in 36 months. How do you navigate that? Because I'm sure there's been some employees that may have been a little too unrealistic, and it's like there's no path to you going from $15 an hour to $200,000 in 12 months.
I love that question, and that happens. And the beauty of it is you get to have the conversation. And now it's an education, it's a teaching moment.
Gotcha.
And they get to see that their dreams aren't in alignment with reality unless they're going to go and do some extremely unique things. And it would take, Mark
Zuckerberg, go start Facebook.
Right. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so now what you get to do is reset and work on that vision and goals worksheet and craft it towards reality. And so that's one way we do that.
And so, and if that person is being unrealistic, or that person, to your point, is not going to be happy in the situation, then what you're saying is like, well, it's probably better we part ways now if you have this dream and there's no way you're going to get there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. What is the one thing you hope people take away from your book if they read Do Nothing?
Well, it's a leadership challenge. And so I'm hopeful that people will consider taking on a challenge, try out this idea to do nothing, and see what that does for your company culture with the people that you're working with, whether you're managing a small team or you have a multinational corporation. Start with you first. You know, some companies think, oh, this meditation, that sounds like a great idea. Let's give that to the team, to the employees. I'll say that's great and that's a wonderful benefit, but take it on yourself first and see the difference of your presence, your awareness. One of the things that I notice is let's just say I'm in a meeting with a team member, and previously I might be thinking, they have an issue they're sharing with me, and I might be thinking, how can I solve this? They should go do X, Y, Z. I know exactly what they should do. And so I'm like sitting there, I'm thinking the whole time, and I'm not even listening. I just want to tell them what to go do. Mm-hmm. That's not helpful. They know the answer. They just need to be heard. They need your full presence. They need to know that you're not thinking about the email you read 5 minutes ago, or the meeting that you're going to in 2 hours. They want to know and feel your energy, that full presence. And this practice helps with that. It's not perfect, but it helps tremendously with that. And what I've found out is team members know the answer. They end up talking it through, and they come to the right place 85% of the time. And so it's a gift that they get, and then you get the gift of just being able to sit there and be there and listen.
Well, Rob, it's been really cool. I want to let our listeners know where they can find you and find out not only more about the book, but I think a lot of people listening would be interested in that silent leadership retreat, because I'm not pulling your chain when I say this. A lot of my entrepreneur buddies and my colleagues have talked about, I just need to turn my brain off for a couple days. And while I don't know the exact agenda and how you go about it, I think it'd be something people would really be interested to read more about.
Sure. So they can go to donothingbook.com, and the retreat information is there along with everything else about Do Nothing. And the retreat is designed specifically for entrepreneurs and leaders. The length of time, the curriculum that we're going to go through, and even going so far as making sense of the travel, so it's not taking too much of a chunk out of your time. So I tried to set it up with that in mind, being an entrepreneur myself and knowing how important our time is, even leaving families if you have those and things of that nature. So that's where they can find the information. Feel free to hit the contact and send me any questions that you have. I'll get right back to you.
Awesome. You can also find him on Twitter, Instagram. He's Rob Dube, ROBDUBE. Once again, president of Image One, and also the author of the new book, Do Nothing: A Leader's Guide to Do Nothing. Rob, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much. Let's talk soon.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Take care,
Enjoyed
Rob.
seeing you too.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So there he is, Rob Dube. Fascinating conversation. Like I said, I more so than the book and what Rob does, I was just so fascinated with this idea of doing nothing, right? To turn your brain off, because I think as entrepreneurs, we all sit there and say, I wish I can just get all this stuff that's in my head constantly. And I'm being serious, like as an entrepreneur, not only am I constantly thinking when I should not be thinking about business, but also the lucid dreaming aspect. I was being 100% honest there. Like even in my sleep, I'm working through stupid scenarios and proposals. So I think the idea, whether it be meditation, the silent retreat, just some way to kind of reset your brain, which is a muscle and controls your whole central nervous system. And I think it's one thing that we neglect more than anything else while we're in the gym working on the buys and tries type deal. But we appreciate you guys for listening. We would love if you guys can subscribe to our podcast, especially if you can give us a 5-star rating so more people can hear and learn and gain some insight. The whole idea of this is to provide value to some of you hustlers out there, you entrepreneurs, business owners, etc. Want to give a shout out to my producers, Auntie Lightning and David Furker. It's been another fun one, Entrepreneur Wrap. We'll see you guys next time.